You know, at the end of the day, we're not going to be able to, as much as everybody knows the answer to this housing problem is creating more supply, it's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen like as quick as we want it to be in general. So this is a good measure, I would say.
Look, I get it. The Toronto real estate market is confusing. Whether you're a new or experienced investor or just looking for a home to raise your family in, join us at Broadview Table Talks as you sit around the table with my friends, talk about the real estate and the ever-changing market in Toronto.
Okay, welcome to another edition of Broadview Table Talks. Today we got some news, lots of news. New year, new news.
New news.
So today's January 4th. And yesterday I found some interesting news. You know, the BC government just rolled out a new thing, and it's kind of scary. It's the rescission period.
Oh boy.
So by default, all sales now have a 3-day rescission period. They can actually back out after 3 days, which is kind of scary in my opinion. Not scary. It's cool for the buyers. You know, don't get me wrong. Right now in a down market, okay, yeah, it's not going to make a difference, right? Because the market's kind of cooled anyway. But as it kind of heats back up, which I think the fundamental, you know, it's going to heat back up because, you know, like at the end of the day, we're letting in 500,000 new people to the country. They're going to need to settle somewhere, and they just naturally gravitate towards big cities. We all know that, right? And the cost of it's, you know, shrinking supplies, all supply and demand, whatever. But that's going to be an issue right now, or not right now, but like as the market heats back up again.
Yeah, for sure.
So I actually see this as a good thing because I'm a very decisive person. So one of the big things that we always came across was whenever there was pressure, whenever there was an offer night, people always felt like they had the pressure to make a decision and they weren't sure if that's the right one. And which is why we tried to take steps, you know, pre-list inspections. We allowed people to get all their pre-qualifications, pre-approvals, everything done before making an offer. With a 3-day grace period, I kind of feel like that allows people to be a little bit more clear-headed about whether or not they actually want a place.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a good thing. I mean, it's kind of like the pre-construction market, right? Where you have a 10-day cooling period in Ontario. So, I mean, it's good for the buyer for sure. It just kind of makes it shaky for the sellers, right?
For sure. And then,
You know,
okay, go ahead.
no, you're saying?
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just saying that it's going to make things uncertain when things heat back up again, when we have bidding wars and all that. It's going to make it a little more competitive, which is nice. It'll make it, you know, actually it's different kind of challenges. I think the number of offers as the market comes back is still going to be the same or if not higher, right? You know, back in the heyday, we saw like 20, 30, 40, 50 offers per project, per house, per listing, right? So I think we're going to get back there.
So for me, it's like what I think about is like for the sellers. So when we see like offers coming in with how we're seeing it now, they have status condition or like just condition in general with this rescission period. If it's a firm offer, they could potentially walk out. But then what does that mean for the sellers? You know what I mean? So it's kind of like stressful for the sellers because then it doesn't really matter if it's conditional or firm. They could still back out with just $200 for every, $100,000 penalty, right?
Yeah, so they actually just said that is 0.25% as which is a good measure. It's good, I guess.
Countermeasure?
I guess.
Whereas
You
$100,
don't have people just putting in fake offers all the time and just rescinding, right? Kind of like, so there's kind of like a transaction fee, if you will, like a penalty. If you do back out, it's a quarter point. So for every $1 million, you're going to pay $2,500 as a penalty to the seller.
Yeah.
Which I get it. You know, it's kind of a good measure. It's actually a great creative idea. It's just that it's hard, right? When you're creating all this hype for people to come to your house and you have a bidding war or whatever. And then all of a sudden, you got to do more showings again. You got to put it back on the market and it just kind of gets really nasty. In theory, you may not have to. If there's 20 offers, the 19th one might be able to, or the second one might be able to, you know, come back to the table. Which is not a bad thing, I guess. So I guess it kind of makes sense in a heated market. It's a good measure if you're not able to create more supply.
Of course.
It's just that I think, you know, I'm kind of scared it's going to come to Ontario. You know, right now it's only in BC.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's effect as of yesterday, January 3rd.
It's a good thing for them to test it out first. I mean, a lot of the proponents for the BC project, they're saying that they expect that consumers, given the choice, are less likely to back out because they don't have that pressure up front to agree to everything and sign everything off.
But then would that increase the tire kickers though? Because then at least they'd be like, okay.
Well, not for the fee. I mean, if there's a small fee to it.
Yeah.
But that's if it's actually accepted, right?
I feel like at the end of the day, it plays into people's psychology and it makes them feel a little bit more comfortable with saying yes and signing on the dotted line and just going through with it. instead of being forced to.
So they don't feel like they're precious. Like,
Exactly.
okay, you got 24 hours to provide this.
It makes it hard as a seller or a listing agent, but if you're the buyer agent or the buyer, then it's actually better because, you know, at the end of the day, we're not going to be able to, as much as everybody knows the answer to this housing problem is creating more supply, it's not going to happen overnight. And It's not going to happen like as quick as we want it to be in general.
sure.
So this is a good measure, I would say. I just, you know, kind of scared if it comes, like, you know, for example, the vacant home tax, right? That's new in Ontario, in Toronto. That came from, or Ontario actually, really. Toronto, sorry.
Yeah.
But that came from BC.
Yeah.
They started it.
They started it first 2-3 years back. It's going to happen sooner or later. So, speaking of vacant home tax, what's going on with that? Anybody know?
So the other ones that I saw was the ban on the foreign buyers for 2 years. Penalties are about $10,000, but there are some exceptions. Foreign students, international students are allowed. Work permits people or refugees. Those are people that be like permitted to able to buy something here.
Sorry, there's no penalty for $10,000. The penalty for aiding
So they
to
don't
buy it is $10,000.
Yeah.
The government, the federal government, can actually back out your sale if the transaction is found to be a foreign buyer. So they say you truly weren't allowed to buy it, so they can actually force a sale on you. Just like if you were forced a power of sale if you don't pay your mortgage, right? They can do the same thing, which is kind of scary.
Yeah.
But you know, honestly, foreign buyers only account for a single-digit amount of buyers in Ontario, in Canada for that matter. I mean, I saw a graph somewhere it's like 4% or 3%, depending on which province you're in.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's going to make that much of an impact to the buyer pool here, anyway, to the supply or to the demand. I still think it's going to be a hot market once the interest rates come back down.
Oh, for sure.
And there's also going to be loopholes, just international students in general, right? Because now just more students are going to come anyways.
Yeah, but I think it's a big deterrent for foreign buyers to buy here, especially with, like, for example, the 25% tax, right? Non-resident speculation tax. I can personally account for people that actually have decided not to buy here because the 25% upfront fee was too high. Even though they're going to get permanent residency here, they actually decided not to move here and they moved back to the States, or they moved to the States instead of coming from Asia, right?
That's also true. Yeah.
So I think that's a big deterrent more than the ban of it altogether. I mean, the fact is you're not allowed to, even regardless of loopholes or not, right? Because the government, ideally, like the federal government, I think it's actually not a bad strategy. It's like not like we can fight it anyway, so I might as well, go with it, right? But like, they're basically bringing people to the country to work, right? To help our labor force, and then allowing them to buy homes. But everybody else, they're not allowed to come here, which kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
I think.
It's a little bit more selective with the process because right now prioritizing housing is the most important thing to do.
For our people that actually need it.
Exactly. For the people that are actually here and staying.
Right.
Yeah. So it makes sense.
Right.
Yeah. And it's the same thing with the vacancy tax because we want to make sure that we maintain low vacancy rates. Although, I mean, historically, wasn't it as low as 0.7%?
It was, yeah.
Yeah. So with a vacancy rate as low as that, I can't imagine that policy being too effective in a city like Toronto. Although time will tell.
I think they're just using policy to squeeze out every kind of efficiency out there to create more supply. With the whole Bill 23 and allowing more units, more densification in urban cities, that makes a big thing.
Yeah.
Right. The vacant home tax, for example. So that doesn't apply to rural areas, right? Like vacation properties and all that. Like it only applies to major urban cities where everybody wants to be anyway.
Yeah.
And then also affects, only residential, not commercial properties. So if you want to invest, if you're a foreigner and you want to invest in commercial properties, you can certainly do that.
And we also do that too.
Right. And what do you mean?
We also do commercial properties too.
Yeah, we can help with commercial properties, yes. But like, a commercial property could be residential. It could be like a 4-unit commercial, residential, fourplex, or 5plex. So that is considered commercial. So I don't know. It'd be funny. It'd be interesting to see how things go.
Well, I feel like they're going to get a lot of tax revenue right off the bat because at the end of the year when they announced that it was going into effect, a lot of people were thinking, I don't have to fill out this declaration form because I live in it. It's my principal residence. It's like, no, you actually have to. Everyone does.
I think they'll give you a warning as they're rolling it out first. But, you can certainly, like, I filled out a few of them, and you can certainly lie on it, right? You can put an address on it. But, they do say in the disclaimer that they have the right to ask for more information. And if you can't produce the lease or you can't show a tenant or whatever they do to make sure that the actual place is actually occupied, they'll levy a 1% tax on your property.
Yeah, for sure.
So, I don't know. I think it's, making underutilized properties actually utilized, I think it kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
I'm not a fan of government intervention, but it kind of makes sense, especially because, the worst cases that we go to, like a city like Hong Kong, where real estate prices are just through the roof and it just doesn't make sense anymore. What articles did you find?
So the main article that I was actually interested in was something that came out of BC, the Real Estate Association out there.
Yeah.
And it's
is it a testing ground or something?
it's
It seems like it.
pretty much seems like that. I mean,
Well, it's just because the fundamentals don't make sense, right? Because it's kind of like the whole Asian money coming over
got
and
it.
just speculators buying there, and just it's the most expensive real estate in Canada for sure,
Yeah.
or used to be anyway. Toronto is,
Yeah.
but it just doesn't make sense. The commerce isn't there,
Yeah.
right? And it's just people hoarding properties. I guess you could say, right?
well, I mean, it is interesting because based on everything that we said so far, it seems like BC is cognizant of all these issues, which is why they have so many new policies that are targeting this housing supply issue from so many fronts.
Okay.
And they're talking about a little bit of everything, including restricting blind bidding, making sure that home inspections and financing are actually mandatory when it comes to purchase and sales, and consumer protection risks. It's a lot, and it's a lot of steps to take to actually get to a purchase of a home. But it's good to see that the testing ground, as I like to think of it, is actually thinking about all these different aspects of how to purchase real estate in Canada and approaching the problem not just from like, okay, look, we're going to levy a tax on this group of population. We're going to do this. They're actually going about it in a holistic way, and that's promising. And
So who's this? The BC
Real Estate
Association proposing this?
Yep, they're asking for these policy changes.
I am shocked. I'm shocked. I'm shocked that that's the case.
And I'm optimistic for the future as well, because it seems like we know what the issue is and we are taking steps to do something about it. Time will tell.
Because I mean, essentially, if real estate was allowed to run free like the Wild West, like it just like, why wouldn't you? If you have capital, it just continues to build more capital, and only the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. That causes this big wedge between the wealth gap. And like I said, it's like Hong Kong, right? We have these cage homes where you rent a 1+ den or whatever, and there's like 12 people living in small little cages, like 20 square foot cages, or cubic foot cages, I should say.
Yeah.
So it's a big problem, I think.
It is.
And you're right. There is good steps, and as we mature as a society, and as more innovation comes out, I think, it just kind of sucks, right? Like, as a real estate investor, you should be able to do what you want. It's a free market. You should let the market dictate prices, but I guess it's just the downside of it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, coming from the situation where we have less supply that's actually affecting people's livelihoods and their homes, I'd say this is a good compromise to get everyone sort of on a level playing field.
Yeah.
Right.
It's helpful.
Right.
And investors will continue to be investors. They will find a way.
Right.
Yeah, this gives a kind of like a foundation of this is how to prevent certain things to like, it's like in that movie Big Short, everyone just giving away, mortgages, whatever, then it flops, right? So it's just kind of like these are foundation steps. So just to kind of like bulletproof that whole buying real estate,
It makes our industry stronger.
Yeah.
Sure, I guess. Because it's kind of like, I want to be on that side where it's a winning formula. It used to be like that, right? Where it's a no-brainer, where the cost of capital was cheaper than the return, than inflation, actually, for that matter.
Yeah.
And that's why we have this problem in Canada versus the States, right? Where our pricing is 10 times what their pricing is, depending on which market you're in. Obviously, there's obviously more expensive markets in the States than Toronto is. But like, essentially the whole, how we got here in the first place is because interest rates were cheaper than inflation.
Yep.
So if you're buying an asset at, call it $1 million, right? And it costs you 2% to fund it, but it's growing at 4% because inflation is growing at 4%. It's a no-brainer to buy more real estate.
Yes.
So now it's kind of the reverse. And now you got to actually do things to actually add value to properties.
Yeah. Which is great. A lot of the buildings were aging and a lot of the infrastructure was aging. So as long as we keep investing back into the infrastructure in the buildings and continue working on improving employment conditions in Toronto, quality of living is just going to rise.
I agree. It's going to be certainly expensive to be part of a society like this, but it will be better. I mean, for example,
More balanced.
Well, maybe balanced. I don't know. You can argue that, but like for the majority of the people anyway.
Yeah.
Like I think an iPhone's made my life better. I don't know about you guys, so you can argue that, right? Like, or I should say phone. I shouldn't say iPhone in general. But it's like now we have a computer in our
Smartphone.
hands.
Yeah, exactly.
We're going to send a man to the moon again, or a person to the moon, and like, we haven't done that in 60 years or whatever, right? So now Elon Musk has created rockets and electric cars and things like that, right? So I think innovation and all that stuff that's happening in society is better for us in general. So I don't know. That's how capitalism works. It's just that people that understand it will do well. People that don't understand it or aren't fortunate to have enough resources or ability to do so may not do so well and they'll get left behind. But the idea of regulations and policies like this is so that everybody goes along for the ride.
Yeah. Try to create more equality and balance. Because we've seen what the extreme is like.
Anyway, if you want to learn more about this stuff, we talk about this every week. Consider subscribing, and give us a thumbs up if you like this video, wherever you're watching it, or if you listen on iTunes or Apple or Spotify, give us a positive comment. All right, thanks for watching. Catch you next week.
Take care, guys.
Add it up.